Hello everyone. Today, I invite you on a journey not to a distant land, but inward to a place most people neglect to explore. It is the path to self-mastery, and while many chase the outer world, wealth, fame, validation, few take the time to understand the inner world where true power lies. When most people hear the word mastery, their minds leap to external achievements, career success, physical accomplishments, accolades, or dominance over others. But true self-mastery has nothing to do with how much control you exert over the world around you. It is instead about how well you understand and command the world within you. The external world is full of variables you can't control, people's opinions, market changes, relationships, whether even the timing of opportunity. But there is one realm that is entirely yours, one space where sovereignty is possible, your inner landscape, your thoughts, your emotions, your focus, your responses, and your choices. Self-mastery is the decision to stop being a slave to impulse, fear, laziness, and distraction. It's choosing not to react blindly, but to pause, observe, and act with clarity. It's understanding that most battles we fight are not against others. They are against our own untrained mind, against the ego's demands, and against the emotional storms that rise without warning. People often seek to change the world, but fail to change themselves. They try to manage outcomes, but neglect to manage their moods. They try to lead others without first leading themselves. Yet the deepest truth is this: if you don't master your own mind, someone or something else will, be it your past, your fears, or the noise of society. Real strength is silent and invisible. It's the calm you maintain when chaos surrounds you. It's the discipline to say no to short-term pleasure for long-term growth. It's the maturity to keep your integrity when no one is watching. That kind of strength cannot be earned through external victories. It can only be cultivated by turning inward, by sitting with yourself, facing what's uncomfortable, and transforming it instead of escaping it. Self-mastery begins the moment you realize that the outer world is simply a mirror reflecting the condition of your inner world. Change the mirror? No. Change the image, and that image is shaped daily through mindfulness, honesty, and consistent inner work. Until you learn to rule yourself, you will always be ruled by habits, by people, by emotions, by circumstances. But once you turn your gaze inward, once you dedicate yourself to inner excellence, the world outside no longer controls you. It begins to reflect. In a world that glorifies busyness, noise, and complexity, the idea that self-mastery requires stillness and simplicity might seem counterintuitive, even radical. But this truth is ancient. Growth doesn't thrive. Mastery is not found in more tasks, more distractions, more stimulation, but in less noise, less chaos, less unnecessary movement. The modern mind is overstimulated, constantly pulled in 10 directions by notifications, obligations, opinions, and information. And in that overstimulation, we lose contact with ourselves. We become reactive, not reflective. We move faster, but with less direction. We consume more, but digest less. In that state, how can mastery arise? Stillness is not the absence of action, of meaningful action. It is in the pause that wisdom arises. When you become still, truly still, you begin to hear the quiet voice that has been drowned out by the world's volume. The voice of clarity, the voice of truth. In stillness, you don't escape life. You see it more clearly. Simplicity, likewise, is not about having nothing. It's about focusing only on what matters. Self-mastery is not a scattered pursuit. It is focused and intentional. The master is not the one who juggles 100 things, but the one who chooses a few with care and devotes himself completely. Complexity confuses, simplicity clarifies. A mind that is always running can't observe. A life that is always busy can't reflect. But mastery requires reflection. It requires you to step back and ask, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? Is this essential? Is this aligned with my purpose? Without those questions, we live in loops, not in growth. Stillness allows you to meet yourself without masks. Simplicity strips away the excess and reveals the essential. Together, they form the ground from which mastery grows. You don't need more information. You need more clarity. You need more. You don't need more noise. You need more silence. You don't need to chase more things. You need to go deeper with fewer. Most people are not suffering from a lack of ambition, but from too much clutter, mental, emotional, physical. The path to mastery isn't paved with constant motion. It begins when you can sit, undistracted, and meet your own mind. When you can simplify your focus, your habits, your intentions, and your surroundings, you create the conditions for growth to take root. Only when the waters are still can you see what lies beneath the surface. And only when life is simplified can the self be truly refined. Discipline is not a punishment. It is not rigidity or denial. At its core, discipline is an act of love. Love for your future self, for your potential, for the life you're capable of living. It's the bridge between who you are now and who you could be. And in the journey to self-mastery, nothing builds that bridge more powerfully than consistent, intentional discipline. Many people wait for motivation to take action, but motivation's temporary, fragile, and often absent when you need it most. Discipline, on the other hand, is dependable. It is the decision to act not because you feel like it, but because it aligns with who you want to become. Understand this. You are becoming what you practice. Every thought you indulge, every habit you repeat, every choice you make is shaping your character. If you practice procrastination, you become someone who delays. If you practice complaining, you become someone who finds problems instead of solutions. But if you practice patience, focus, gratitude, or restraint, even in small ways, you are training those qualities into your being. Discipline is not about grand gestures or intense bursts of effort. It's about small acts repeated with consistency. Waking up early, turning off distractions, finishing what you start, saying no when it matters. These are not dramatic moments. Over time, they become your identity, and your identity is what drives your life. Without discipline, potential decays. Dreams stay dreams. Goals remain just ideas. With discipline, even the most distant aspiration begins to take form. And the truth is, discipline is not a trait you're born with. It's a muscle, one that strengthens through use and weakens through neglect. There will be days when it's easier to quit, to indulge, to avoid. That is when discipline becomes your anchor. It's the inner voice that says, oh, do it anyway. Show up anyway. Train anyway. And every time you obey that voice, you deepen your mastery, not just over tasks, but over self. What you repeat becomes who you are. If you want to become powerful, practice strength. If you want to become wise, practice stillness. If you want to become free, practice discipline. It is the foundation beneath every form of transformation. No one drifts into mastery. It is earned quietly through daily choices that seem insignificant in the moment but compound over time. Discipline is the proof of commitment. It's the signal to yourself and to life that you are serious. Without it, you are at the mercy of your moods. With it, you train your mind, direct your energy, and reshape your reality. Self-mastery does not begin with action. It begins with awareness. Before you can change anything, you must first see it clearly. You cannot master what you are unaware of. You cannot shift what you do not even know. Awareness is the light that reveals the inner landscape. your thoughts, your patterns, your beliefs, your emotional reflexes. Most people go through life asleep to themselves. They react automatically, think habitually, and repeat behaviors without questioning their origins. They are driven by unconscious conditioning, and because they never pause to observe it, they remain trapped within it. To become self-aware is to wake up, to step out of automatic living and into conscious observation. It's the ability to watch your mind without being swallowed by it. When a thought arises, fear, doubt, anger, ego, awareness says, I see you, not with resistance, not with shame, simply with attention. And that attention alone begins to change things. When you watch a thought without judgment, you remove its power to control you. You become the observer rather than the reactor. You begin to see the space between the trigger and your response. In that space lies freedom. In that space, you are no longer a puppet pulled by your emotions. You are a presence choosing how to respond. Growth doesn't happen because you force it. It happens because you understand. Awareness allows understanding. Understanding leads to change. Most people try to fix their behavior without addressing the root, but behavior is the fruit. Awareness helps you see the root. Why do you procrastinate? Why do you overthink? Why do you self-sabotage, lash out, seek validation? These are not surface problems. They are signals pointing you inward. Awareness allows you to trace them to their source gently and honestly. But for awareness to create transformation, it must be free of judgment. If you observe yourself with harshness, you close the door to growth. You cannot shame yourself into evolving. But when you observe with curiosity and compassion, you create a safe space for change to occur. You begin to work with yourself, not against yourself. Awareness is not passive. It's not soft. It is one of the most powerful forms of self-discipline because it demands presence. It requires the courage to sit with what is, to watch your own inner world unfold without the need to control, deny, or escape it. It turns your life into your teacher. Every frustration becomes a mirror. Every reaction becomes a lesson. Every emotion becomes a messenger. When awareness becomes your daily practice, transformation becomes your natural state. And the more aware you become, the more choices you unlock. You are no longer bound by the patterns of the past. You begin to live from consciousness, not conditioning. That is the beginning of true inner mastery, not in changing who you are, but in finally seeing who you are. Many people believe they need perfect conditions to grow, peaceful surroundings, supportive people, ideal opportunities. But life rarely provides such a clean canvas, and in truth, it doesn't need to, because self-mastery is not cultivated in comfort. It is forged in the everyday difficulties of being alive. Every single moment you experience is part of your training. Every delay, disappointment, irritation, and conflict is a doorway. Opportunity to practice awareness, resilience, patience, and presence. But only if you recognize the mistake is thinking that growth only happens during formal learning, a course, a retreat, a ritual. But life itself is the greatest teacher. Every person you meet becomes a mirror. Every hardship becomes a lesson. And every situation becomes a test of the qualities you claim to value. Do you say you value patience? Life will send you delays. Do you want to be strong? Life will challenge you with discomfort. Do you seek peace? Life will place you in chaos and see if you can remain still. The outer world is always interacting with your inner world. It's not punishing you, it's refining you. The difficult moments you face are not obstacles to your growth. They are the growth. Without resistance, strength cannot develop. Without friction, character remains shallow. The disciplined mind understands this. Nothing is wasted. No experience, no matter how small or uncomfortable, is meaningless. Whether it's standing in traffic, dealing with criticism, facing failure, or sitting with uncertainty, each one offers you a chance to train your inner posture. But most people miss these chances because they resist life as it is. They label challenges as ibad and wait for things to be easier before they commit to self-mastery. Every struggle is your dojo, every irritation is your test, every moment is an invitation. And training doesn't always look noble or grand. Sometimes it's simply choosing not to react, not to speak impulsively, not to follow the same destructive thought. Sometimes it's choosing to stay, to breathe, to observe, or to let go. If you treat life like a battlefield, you will always be at war. But if you treat it like a training ground, you start to see value even in the hardest moments. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And begin to ask, what is this teaching me? That shift is profound, because now every experience becomes usable, every failure becomes feedback, every discomfort becomes your edge, the place where growth begins. The truth is, life will not wait for you to be ready. It is always in motion, always testing, always offering new lessons. Your only task is to show up with awareness and treat every moment as a practice round for who you are becoming. The path to mastery is not away from life. It is through it. The mess, the beauty, the complexity, all of it is your curriculum. One of the most pivotal shifts on the path to self-mastery is the move from blame to responsibility. This shift is not just psychological, it is transformational. Because the moment you stop pointing outward and start looking inward, you take your power back. Blame is easy. It is reflexive, seductive, and deeply ingrained in how many people operate. When things go wrong, when challenges arise, the default response is often, it's their fault. The system is flawed. The world is unfair. I can't help it because of my past, my circumstances, my environment. And while these statements may carry truth, they are not empowering. Blame gives away your agency. It says, I am not in control. Something else is steering my life. And as long as you live in that story, you will always feel powerless, reactive, and stuck. Responsibility, on the other hand, is not about guilt or taking on burdens that aren't yours. True responsibility means recognizing that you are the author of your response. You may not choose what happens, but you always choose what you do with it. That is where your freedom begins. Taking responsibility is a bold act. It requires humility to admit that you have contributed to your own suffering. It requires strength to accept that your mindset, your habits, your patterns, all of these shape your experience. It means facing the uncomfortable truth that sometimes you are the obstacle. But it also means realizing that you are also the solution. When you take full ownership of your life, your actions, your energy, your choices, you stop waiting to be rescued. You stop needing approval. You stop fearing uncertainty. Because now you're grounded in something solid, yourself. Ownership breeds confidence. Why? Because you no longer outsource your happiness or peace to external forces. You don't need everything to be perfect in order to feel powerful. You become the kind of person who can navigate imperfection with grace, because your center of control is internal, not external. Responsibility is not a burden. It is liberation. It frees you from the illusion that you are a victim of life. It calls you to rise, not with aggression, but with clarity and courage. The master never says, it's their fault I failed. The master says, what can I learn? What can I change? What is within my control, even if it's just my attitude or effort? That is the language of growth. And in that space of responsibility, transformation becomes possible. because you are no longer waiting for permission to change. You're choosing it. You're no longer hoping life will get easier. You're getting stronger. Blame may feel good in the moment, but it leads to stagnation. Responsibility may be uncomfortable at first, but it leads to power. When you stop waiting for someone else to fix it, you become the one who evolves. That's the root of mastery, not control over life, but control over how you meet life. In a world that constantly measures success by external achievements, titles earned, wealth accumulated, status gained, it's easy to forget the most important battlefield of all, the one within. While winning in the world may earn applause, victory over the self earns liberation. Self-mastery is not about conquering others. It is about conquering the very forces inside you that quietly sabotage your peace, your purpose, and your potential. It's about rising above the inner resistance that tells you to quit. It's about quieting the voice of fear when it urges you to play small. It's about overcoming the ego that constantly demands validation, control, or superiority. The truth is, if you cannot govern your mind, your emotions, your cravings, or your impulses, no amount of external success will ever satisfy you. You'll have the trophy but still feel empty. You'll gain the world but lose yourself in anxiety, restlessness, and the constant need to prove something. But when you master the self, when you learn to sit with discomfort without reacting, to speak without ego, to act from wisdom rather than impulse, a deeper success begins to bloom. It's not loud, it's not always visible, but it is real. It's a sense of inner authority that no one can give or take from you. Victory over the self means you are no longer controlled by unconscious patterns. You are no longer a slave to moods, fears, or the opinions of others. You do not need external circumstances to be perfect in order to feel powerful. You do not need people to approve of you in order to feel worthy. You are rooted in something deeper, self-respect, inner discipline, and a stable sense of being. That is real power. The kind that doesn't shout but commands. The kind that doesn't chase but attracts. The kind that doesn't need to dominate others because it has already mastered the most difficult person of all, you. This is the highest form of success. Not because it excludes external achievement, but because it gives all external achievement meaning. What good is success if you're anxious, reactive, or lost in self-doubt? What good is freedom if your mind is still a prison? What good is power if it collapses under stress, temptation, or insecurity? When you win over the self, you become steady in the face of chaos. You stay grounded when life becomes unstable. You act with integrity even when no one is watching. You speak with clarity even in the face of conflict. You live in alignment, not just with your goals, but with your principles. And perhaps most importantly, you discover peace, not the temporary kind that depends on everything going right, but the quiet, lasting peace that comes from knowing who you are, what you stand for, and what you're committed to becoming. That is the essence of self-mastery. Not the illusion of perfection, but the strength to evolve, the courage to be accountable, and the wisdom to lead yourself before you ever try to lead the world. So now the path lies clearly before you, not out there in the noise of the world, but inward, where the real work begins. Self-mastery is not a destination, it is a daily practice, a quiet revolution, a sacred agreement with yourself to keep showing up, to keep choosing awareness over habit, discipline over comfort, and growth over ego. You won't always get it right. There will be setbacks, moments of weakness, and days where the old patterns feel overwhelming. But every time you pause instead of react, reflect instead of blame, choose stillness over chaos, you are winning. not over others, but over the only thing that ever truly needed conquering, your undisciplined self. And in that quiet, consistent victory, you will discover a power that cannot be taken, a peace that does not shake, and a strength that does not depend on anyone or anything else. Because the secret to self-mastery was never hidden, it was simply waiting for you to turn inward and remember, you are the path, you are the practice, you are the master. Thank you.